How y'all doing? I'm Bob McLellan, chef at Fuzzy Line Brew Pub. We have Howe Farms boneless pork chops that we're going to blacken and top with an apple chutney. First, we're going to take each chop, flatten it out, put your knife directly on the board, make a small incision all the way around, about a ½ inch in, and then you're just going to lightly pull that back and continue to follow at a nice level pace. Until you're almost all the way through and it folds over like a book. And then just one more small incision in the middle and it'll be completely flat to give a nice surface area. And we'll do the same thing for the next one. All right, after we've butterflied the chops, what we're going to do is get our mise en place together, which is just essentially all of your ingredients you're gonna need for this dish. So this dish, what we're going to do is we have our blackening seasoning here, which is a mixture of paprika, cayenne, oregano, salt, pepper, garlic, very Creole. Next to that, we have our topping of what we're gonna do a little bit of microgreens with, these are baby radish microgreens. It's going to go on top of apple chutney, which we're going to make with fresh apples from Michigan. And then we have cranberries as well in there and a little bit of onions with a little bit of brown sugar. So it'll be sweet, savory, pairs really well with the pork and the spice. And then it'll go over a little bit of an arugula salad with some burnt lemons to squeeze on top if desired. Once we've got our butterflied pork chops, all of our ingredients together, we're going to season the pork chops. And while we're seasoning the pork chops, we have a pan on the range at medium to medium high heat. You want to get the pan up to temperature before you put any meat into the pan so you get a very nice sear on the pan. And in blackening, it's very, very important that we go to medium high to almost high heat so we get a proper sear on said pork. So now we have our pork ready to be seasoned with the blackening seasoning. You want to add a healthy amount of seasoning to each chop on each side. And then before we turn it over, we're going to lightly press this in. And then we'll flip and do the same to the other side. This seasoning is spicy, sweet, herbal, but it does have a little bit of kick to it. And we'll set that aside. Take the other chop and kind of dab up the rest of this seasoning here and then season again. Same way we did with the first one. Press it in lightly. Turn and repeat. Press it in, and then we'll let this stand for a couple minutes while the pan gets hot, and then we'll add oil and sear. All right, now that we have our pork chops completely seasoned, our pan is on medium-high heat. What we're gonna do is take a neutral oil like canola oil, lightly spray on the bottom of the pan. We're gonna make sure it's fully coated. Once it gets a little bit of smoke, you want a little bit of smoke like this because you want it medium-high for blackening. You really want to develop that crust. What we're gonna do is we'll take the chops and we're gonna start here, go down, and then always go away from you. Always brush away just in case any oil flares up, you're not gonna burn yourself. So once again, one more time, we'll go down with the chop, and then we'll fade away. So while these are cooking, what we're gonna do is we're gonna just give a nice little press so we get all the surface area on the hot pan. And then for a chop this size, once it's butterflied, we'll probably go 3 to 4 minutes on the first side, 2 to 3 minutes on the second side. And then we'll pull it off. And just like a steak, just because it's pork, doesn't mean it doesn't need to be rested. So we'll take it off, we'll put it on a grated pan, and we'll just leave it be. Just let it sit, let it chill. And on all those juices will redistribute back into the meat. And then before you cut it, it'll be a very, very juicy product. Now, while this is cooking, this is going to seem like it's going to burn a little bit. It's going to get darker than your average pork chop because of the seasonings, a little bit of the sugar in there, hence blackening. So if you're at home, I would highly suggest, if you have a vented system above your range or anything else, turn that on because it might get a little bit smoky in your kitchen. As you can see, it is getting pretty dark. We'll turn the temperature down just a little bit so it has time to cook all the way through. And then any little pork bits that are kind of curling up like that, you want to just kind of tamp down just a little bit, press down so it gets a nice sear evenly across. All of that sear is all flavor that you want in there. But you don't want to press too hard because you don't want to force any of the juices out. We'll cook this to an internal temperature of anywhere between 135 to 145 degrees, depending on how you like your pork cooked. And then we'll rest and go. Usually what I'm looking for when I'm cooking pork or any steak in a pan is that the juices will start to rise up on the second side once you flip it. So if we see right here on this piece of pork right here, the juices are kind of coming up. And those are a little bit red still. Once those get pinkish to clear, we're talking about that protein is going to be done, fully in set. I'm gonna pull the pork off when the juices are gonna run a little bit pink, just because that's telling me that the pork is probably about 130 degrees. And then when we take it off the cooking surface, it's going to carry over temperatures from about 5 to 7-ish degrees. So don't be afraid to take pork off just a little bit before you think it's done. That carryover temperature while it's resting will get it to the desired temperature. Another way to test it is just a little finger test. What you want is you want some spring back directly. These are about done right now. When I poke it, it springs back very tightly, very nice. And then, like I said, we're gonna want that carryover temperature to finish it off. So what we're gonna do is, we'll take this pork off the heat. We'll lay that down, perfect color. And we're just gonna let this rest. All right, once the pork chops have rested for probably 5 to 7 minutes, depending on the thickness, you want to wait a little bit longer. If it's a 2-inch pork chop, you want to wait probably 10. These are 1-inch pork chops here, butterflied. So we'll wait about 5 minutes. They've rested, they're good, they're ready to go. What we'll do is we'll slice them, make it a little bit easier to eat. Make the initial start, just slice right down the middle. And then what I'm gonna do is just slightly turn my knife, put it on the bias, fingers tucked so nobody's cutting themselves, and then you're not pressing hard through. So nice even strokes with your knife. Let the knife do the work for you. No pressure. And it just slides on through, and that'll retain all the moisture in the meat. And if we want to flip that over, you can see that meat is perfectly juicy, cooked all the way through. is perfect. So we'll set this aside. Do the same thing with the other slice. Nice and easy. What I tell people when they're trying to cut steaks or pork chops or anything else like this is you want to have a very light hand in the handle, and then you want to cut it almost as if it's a piece of white bread to where you don't smash it. So in the restaurant, what we train is take a piece of white bread, slice it very, very thin, very, very little pressure, and then you want to treat your meat the exact same way. So you're not squeezing all that moisture, all that flavor out onto your cutting board. So once this is nice and it's cut, ready to go, then we're going to build this plate. So you take your plate, and then we're going to do what we call a build. So for this, we have some nice arugula. This will go down first. Right in the center of the plate. People eat with their eyes, so it's very important that we make a very good looking plate, but it does not have to be hard. It's super easy. So nice fresh arugula. What we'll do is we'll just dress that lightly with just a touch of good olive oil. And then we'll go right on top with the pork. If you leave the pork as was, we're gonna do what we call a shingle. So we're just gonna lay that there. And then once it's shingled, if you lightly press this down, it should open up like a deck of cards like you're pushing it. And then at the end, I just flip that one over and we'll do the same. Maybe crisscross here. So we'll stack that pork on top of itself, flip that, and then slightly turn. It's all centered, it's slightly heightened. It's a very visually appealing to the eye. And then we'll take our apple chutney. Served warm or cold. Spoon directly over the top, and then you're just gonna kind of let that cascade off onto the pork chop. Wherever it falls, it falls. The more organic it looks, the better. So it's not very mechanical looking. Fill in the gaps. That's nice. And then we'll garnish with some fresh herbs. I'm a big fan of any fresh herbs or microgreens to add a nice little vegetal pop to it. These are baby radish greens. So it's gonna be a little bit spicy, but it's gonna wake the palate up. It'll really contrast that sweetness of the apple chutney. And you kind of just want to let it fall where it may again. Build it up slightly. And after which, we'll take a burnt lemon, which we just took, placed flat on a very hot pan. And then we're just gonna garnish right here. So then when you serve to your guests or anybody, family members or friends at home, they can take said lemon, give a nice little drizzle over the top. Well, that's the dish. This is a blackened pork chop over an arugula salad, burnt lemon with an apple chutney over the top.